A millionaire found a girl who lived on the street crying in the rain and took her to his home. Minutes later, he was shocked to see the girl carried the brooch of his late wife in her purse. The crowded city streets pulsed with the frenetic energy of late afternoon. Among the hurried crowd, a small figure stood out, not by haste, but by the stillness of her presence. Sophia, a girl of only 8 years old, sat huddled against the cold wall of an imposing building. Her large brown eyes, framed by a thin, dirty face, peered out between the incessant coming and going of passers-by. Her tangled, dull black hair fell over bony shoulders, covered by a thin, worn jacket. Sophia's clothes, a jumble of faded and patched rags, hung loosely on her body, thinned by hunger. Her bare, grimy and calloused feet silently testified to the harsh miles walked on the city's merciless streets. Why doesn't anyone see me? Why do they all pass by and ignore me here as if I were part of the sidewalk? Can they see me through these rags, or do they only see one more person on the sidewalk? Sophia thought, her inner voice laden with a sadness beyond her years. With trembling hands, Sophia clutched against her chest a piece of stale bread, her only food for the day, given by a kind lady who had passed by earlier. Her stomach rumbled, begging for food, but something in her heart prevented her from devouring the bread immediately. Her eyes scanned the street, searching for someone who might need it more than she did. It was then that she spotted a young mother, just as dirty and raggedly dressed as herself, holding an incessantly crying baby not far from where Sophia was. The woman seemed as lost and desperate as she felt. Maybe I can make someone smile today, even if I can't smile for myself, Sophia murmured to herself, gathering courage. Slowly, Sophia stood up, her thin legs trembling with the effort. Each step was a battle against weakness and hunger. People passed by her without noticing, as if she were just another shadow on the sidewalk. Finally, she reached the young mother, who looked at her with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. Sophia held out the piece of bread, offering it without a word. The mother, with tears in her eyes, hesitated for a moment before accepting the act of kindness. "Thank you, little one. You are an angel sent from heaven," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Sophia's heart warmed at the words of gratitude, even as her stomach protested even more. She watched the mother break the bread and feed the baby, who stopped crying almost instantly. For a brief moment, Sophia forgot her own hunger, lost in the joy of having made a difference, however small, in someone's life. Even if people act like I'm invisible, I can still help someone. I want to be light even while I'm in the darkness. Mommy always told me to be a kind girl, no matter the circumstances, Sophia thought, a fragile smile playing on her lips at the memory and longing for her mother. Suddenly, the sky darkened dramatically, as if responding to Sophia's thoughts. Heavy, menacing clouds gathered above, turning day into premature night. A distant rumble of thunder made Sophia instinctively flinch. People on the street began to move more quickly, seeking shelter from the impending storm. "Oh no, where will I go? Where can I hide? With this rain it will get very cold, and these are the worst nights," Sophia murmured, panic rising in her chest. The rain began to fall, first in sparse drops, then in dense curtains of water. Sophia ran, her bare feet slipping on the wet pavement. She desperately sought a place to shelter, but every door was closed, every entrance blocked. People around her rushed to taxis, shops and buildings, leaving her increasingly alone on the rapidly emptying street. "Please, can someone help me? I don't want to be alone in the storm. Is there anywhere I can stay, just until the rain stops?" Sophia shouted to no one in particular, her voice almost lost in the sound of the rain. The storm lashed the main avenue, turning it into a turbulent river of hurried umbrellas and sliding cars. In the midst of this chaos, Sophia began to cry desperately, not knowing where she could take shelter. "Mommy, why did you have to go? Why did I have to be alone in this big, scary world?" Sophia sobbed softly, her tears mingling with the rain on her face. Amidst the confusion of the avenue, a luxurious car advanced slowly, its headlights cutting through the curtain of rain like sharp knives. Behind the wheel was Robert, a man with kind features and an intelligent look of someone who dealt with big business. His attentive eyes scanned the street, more out of habit than real interest. Suddenly, something caught his attention. A small, staggering figure on the sidewalk, looking more like an injured animal than a child. She was shivering with cold and crying inconsolably. Robert frowned, his hand instinctively moving to the steering wheel. "What is a child doing alone in this weather? Should I stop? Or is this a trap?" he murmured to himself. Undecided, Robert slowed down even more, his eyes never leaving Sophia's figure. The girl was now practically crawling, her strength almost drained. She looked up, her eyes meeting Robert's through the windshield. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Robert felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in that gaze, something terribly familiar. "My God," Robert gasped, his voice trembling. "Those eyes, they remind me of someone. But who? How is that possible?" With his heart racing, Robert finally made a decision. He maneuvered the car to the curb, ignoring the irritated protests of the drivers behind him. His hands were shaking as he unbuckled his seatbelt. The rain continued to fall relentlessly, but Robert barely noticed, his focus entirely on the child who was now only a few meters away. "Hey, little one. Are you okay? Do you need help? Why are you alone in the rain? You don't have anywhere to go," Robert called out, his voice almost lost in the roar of the storm. Hearing the voice, Sophia turned slowly, her eyes, large and frightened, fixed on Robert. For a moment she seemed to consider fleeing, the fear of strangers deeply ingrained in her, but the cold and exhaustion spoke louder. With faltering steps, she approached the car. "No, I don't have a home. Please, sir, I just need a dry place. Just until the rain stops. I promise I won't bother you," Sophia whispered, her voice weak and trembling. Robert felt his heart tighten. The girl's voice, so young and yet laden with so much suffering, hit him like a punch in the stomach. He opened the car door, hesitating for a moment before making an inviting gesture. "Come on, get in. You'll catch pneumonia if you stay out there," he said, trying to sound as gentle as possible. Sophia hesitated, years of distrust fighting against her desperate need for shelter. She took a step forward, then another, until she was finally beside the car. Robert could see now how much she was shivering, her lips almost blue with cold. "I'm not going to hurt you, I promise. I just want to help." "What's your name, little one?" Robert said softly. Sophia swallowed hard, gathering courage to answer. "Sophia," she whispered. "My name is Sophia." With those words, she finally got into the car, leaving a puddle of water on the leather seat. Robert quickly turned on the heater, watching the girl out of the corner of his eye. Now that she was closer, the resemblance to someone he was trying to recall was even more pronounced. He felt his heart beating hard in his chest, a mixture of fear and hope growing within him. "Sophia," Robert repeated the name softly, as if testing its sound. "It's a beautiful name. My name is Robert. Do you have family around here, Sophia?" The girl lowered her eyes, her hands nervously clutching the hem of her soaked t-shirt. "No, sir. I don't have anyone. I'm alone now," she answered in a low voice, biting her lip to keep from crying. Robert felt a wave of emotions hit him. Compassion, concern, and something more, something he couldn't name. He looked at Sophia, studying every detail of her face, the shape of her eyes, the outline of her chin. Everything seemed a perfect replica of someone he was trying so hard to remember. Who does this girl remind me of? Why does she seem so familiar to me? Could this be a sign that I should take care of her? Why do I feel an urge screaming for me to protect her? Robert thought, his heart racing. But what if I'm seeing things that aren't there? Robert shook his head, trying to shake off the confusing thoughts. He turned to Sophia, who was still shivering despite the heater being on full blast. His eyes roamed over the girl's soaked clothes, her dripping hair, and her lips still slightly blue. With a quick movement, he grabbed a soft blanket from the back seat and offered it to Sophia. "Here, little one, wrap yourself in this. It'll help you warm up faster," said Robert, his voice gentle. Sophia hesitated for a moment before accepting the blanket, wrapping herself in it like a protective cocoon. "Thank you, sir. You're very kind. You're someone special. Most people wouldn't care about me," she mumbled, her voice still trembling. Robert smiled softly, feeling a wave of protectiveness wash over him. He started the car, the windshield wipers working furiously against the relentless rain. "Well, Sophia, you don't need to thank me. I think we should get out of here. You must be hungry. How about getting something to eat? Are you hungry?" Sophia's eyes widened, a mixture of hope and distrust shining in them. I don't want to bother you, sir. You've already done so much by getting me out of the rain," she replied, nervously biting her lip. Robert shook his head, determined. "It's no bother at all. You need to eat well. Living on the streets can't be easy." As he drove through the wet streets, Robert kept sneaking glances at Sophia. The girl seemed to relax a bit, the warmth of the car and the security of the blanket taking effect. He cleared his throat, trying to start a conversation. "So, Sophia, you said you're alone. How long have you been, well, on the streets?" Sophia shrank a little in the seat, her fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. It's been 3 months, I think," she answered in a low voice. "Since my mum." Her voice faltered, and she swallowed hard before continuing. "Since my mum was gone." Robert's heart tightened at those words. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting the urge to stop the car and hug the girl. "I'm so sorry, Sophia. It must have been very hard for you," he said softly. Sophia just nodded, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. "My mom was all I had. She always said that one day she would finally tell me who my father was, but—" Sophia stopped talking, her voice choked with emotion. Robert felt his heart skip a beat. "Your father? You don't know him?" Sophia shook her head. "Mom said he didn't know about me, that he left the country before he knew she was pregnant." Robert felt his heart sink as he heard the sad story from the girl. He was about to ask more questions when his cell phone rang, cutting through the tense air of the car. He glanced at the caller ID and saw his sister Caroline's name blinking on the screen. "It's my sister, I need to take this, okay?" he explained to Sophia, who looked at him curiously, before nodding, shrinking further into the seat. Robert took a deep breath before pressing the button to answer the call on speakerphone. "Robert, where the hell are you? I've been waiting for you for an hour for dinner." Caroline's shrill voice filled the car. Robert frowned, suddenly remembering the commitment. "Sorry, Caroline, I had an unexpected situation," he responded, shooting a glance at Sophia. "Unexpected situation? What kind of unexpected situation is more important than having dinner with your only sister?" Caroline asked, her voice dripping with irritation. Robert hesitated, uncertain of how to explain the situation. "It's complicated, Caroline. I found someone who needs help," he finally said. Minutes later, Robert's car glided smoothly into the driveway of the imposing mansion, the headlights cutting through the rainy darkness. Sophia, still wrapped in the blanket, gazed in wonder out the window, her wide eyes reflecting the lights illuminating the facade of the house. Robert parked, turned off the engine, and turned to the girl, a gentle smile on his face. "Well, here we are. This is my home, Sophia. Let's go inside and get you something dry to wear, okay?" he said, his voice soothing. Sophia nodded shyly, still awed by the grandeur of the place. "It's such a big house, it looks like a fairy tale castle," she whispered. As they exited the car, the front door swung open abruptly, revealing Caroline. She was elegantly dressed for dinner, her face a mask of irritation that quickly turned to shock upon seeing Sophia. Robert gently guided the girl toward the entrance, feeling the tension mounting with every step. "Robert, what is the meaning of this?" Caroline hissed, her eyes sparking with anger. "Who is this child?" Her voice dripped with disdain as she looked Sophia up and down. Robert instinctively placed a protective hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Caroline, this is Sophia. I found her on the street, alone in the rain. She needs our help," Robert explained, his voice firm but cautious. He could feel Sophia trembling slightly beneath his hand. "Please, let's go inside. We can talk in there." Caroline crossed her arms, blocking the entrance. Her eyes bore into Sophia like daggers. "Robert, have you lost your mind? You can't just bring a beggar into the house. What if she steals something? What if it's part of some scheme?" Sophia shrank even further, tears starting to form in her eyes. Robert felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. "Enough, Caroline! Sophia is a frightened, alone child. She's staying, even if just for tonight. Now please let us in," he exclaimed, his voice louder than intended. Reluctantly, Caroline stepped aside, allowing Robert and Sophia to enter. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive, with its grand entrance hall and marble staircase. Sophia looked around in awe as Robert gently guided her. Caroline followed closely behind, her disapproving gaze never wavering. Sophia's eyes wandered the walls adorned with paintings and photographs until something caught her attention. It was a large framed photograph of a graduating class. Dozens of smiling faces looked at the camera, all dressed in caps and gowns, but one face in particular made Sophia's heart skip a beat. In the middle of the photograph, beaming radiantly, was a young woman who looked incredibly familiar. Sophia felt her breath quicken. She looked so much like Mom, just a younger version than the one I knew. Maybe a teenager. It must just be a coincidence, she thought, her eyes fixed on the image. The resemblance was uncanny, the same facial features, the same warm smile. And there, pinned to the woman's gown, was a brooch identical to the one Sophia carried in her pocket. Sophia unconsciously reached into her pocket, feeling the familiar shape of the brooch her mother had given her. Her mind swirled with questions. How is this possible? Who is this woman? Why does she have a brooch just like Mom's? Robert noticed Sophia's attention on the photograph. Ah, that's my college graduation class. Good times back then, he commented casually, oblivious to the emotional turmoil within the girl. Sophia just nodded, unable to find words. She wanted to ask about the woman in the photo, but something held her back. A deep instinct told her to keep the questions to herself, to not be a chatterbox. Come on, Sophia, let's find you some dry clothes. Robert's voice brought her back to reality. He gently guided her away from the photograph, toward the stairs. As they climbed, Sophia cast one last glance at the graduation photo. Her heart was heavy with unspoken secrets and unanswered questions. Mom, she thought, I think I miss you so much. Maybe I'm seeing things I want to see. Because I wish you were here, that you were with me. With each step she took, Sophia touched the only memento she had of her mother, the brooch in her pocket, a tangible link to a past she was barely beginning to understand. Minutes later, Sophia sat timidly in one of the plush chairs in the dining room, feeling out of place amidst such elegance. Robert took the head of the table, while Caroline seated herself opposite Sophia, casting furtive, disapproving glances at the girl. Dinner unfolded in a tense silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware against fine china plates. Sophia ate her soup quickly, barely savoring each spoonful of the hot, comforting liquid. She could feel Caroline's piercing gaze upon her, but she strived to keep her eyes fixed on her plate. So, Sophia, where are you from? Surely you must have a family somewhere, Caroline said, finally breaking the silence, her voice falsely sweet. Sophia swallowed hard, feeling a lump form in her throat. Robert shot a warning glance at his sister. I don't have anyone. My mother. She's gone a few months ago, Sophia responded softly, her voice almost a whisper, the words seeming to weigh tons as they left her mouth. Robert felt his heart clench at the evident pain in the girl's voice. Caroline scoffed, clearly skeptical. And your father? Surely there must be someone who can take care of you. It's not my brother's responsibility to look after every street urchin he comes across. Her words were as sharp as blades, cutting through the tense air of the room. Robert shook his head in disapproval at his sister's words. That's enough, Caroline. Sophia is our guest and you will treat her with respect, he exclaimed, his voice laced with contained irritation. Sophia shrank in her chair, wishing she could disappear. Guest? Robert, you've brought a beggar into our home. This is madness. And what if she's part of some scheme? What if there are more people out there waiting to rob us? Caroline laughed humorlessly, gesturing frantically toward the windows, as if expecting to see a horde of thieves about to invade the mansion. Sophia felt tears burning in her eyes. She dropped her spoon, her appetite completely lost. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause trouble. I'll leave, she mumbled, abruptly rising from her seat, her legs trembling as she moved away from the table. Robert stood quickly, reaching Sophia before she could get to the door. Sophia, wait. You're not going anywhere. This is your home now for as long as you need it, he said softly, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder before shooting a stern look at Caroline. And if anyone has to leave, it won't be you. At that moment, Sophia stumbled, unbalanced by emotion and the sudden movement. Her small bag, which she had kept close to her the entire time, fell to the floor, its contents spilling onto the polished marble. Coins rolled, a worn notebook slid a few inches, and then, gleaming under the light of the chandelier, her mother's brooch came to a stop at Robert's feet. The brooch twinkled on the marble floor, capturing everyone's attention in the room. Robert slowly bent down, picking up the delicate object in his hands. His eyes widened in recognition, a mixture of emotions passing across his face. "This brooch. Where did you get it from, Sophia?" he asked, his voice trembling. Sophia, still trembling from her near escape, answered with a choked voice, "It was my mother's. She gave it to me before she left. It's all I have left of her." Her eyes filled with tears at the memory of her mother's last gift. Caroline, who had been watching the scene with growing irritation, suddenly exploded. "Don't you see what's happening here, Robert? This girl is clearly manipulating you. First, she shows up out of nowhere, and now she has a brooch that conveniently looks like something you recognize. I bet she planned all of this. She's probably trying to pass herself off as your long-lost daughter or something, all to get her hands on your money." She pointed an accusing finger at Sophia. Robert, still holding the brooch, looked at his sister with a mixture of shock and anger. "How can you say such a thing, Caroline? Sophia is just a scared, lonely child. She's not scheming anything." He turned to Sophia, who seemed to be shrinking further and further. "That's not true, is it, Sophia? You're not trying to deceive me, are you?" Before Sophia could respond, Robert's cell phone rang loudly, cutting through the tension in the air. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's the office. I need to take this." Shooting a warning look at Caroline, he added, "Behave, both of you. I'll be back in a minute." With that, he stepped out of the room, leaving Sophia and Caroline alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Caroline stared at Sophia with a calculating gaze, while the girl fought not to tremble under the scrutiny. Finally, Caroline spoke, her voice as cold as ice. "Listen here, you little imposter. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's over. You're leaving right now." Before Sophia could protest, Caroline grabbed her by the arm, dragging her out of the room. But Robert said I could stay," Sophia stammered, struggling to break free. Caroline only tightened her grip on the girl's arm. "Robert's not here now, is he? And by the time he gets back, you'll be gone." Within minutes, Caroline had shoved Sophia into her luxury car and sped away from the mansion. Sophia, paralyzed by fear and confusion, could barely breathe as familiar streets gave way to unfamiliar, increasingly grim neighborhoods. "Please, please take me back. I swear I didn't do anything you're accusing me of. I don't want anyone's money. I didn't do anything. I didn't know you'd seen the brooch before," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. Caroline laughed humorlessly, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Take you back for what, so you can keep deceiving my brother? No, dear. Your place is here on the streets with the rest of the beggars." The car came to an abrupt stop on a dark, nearly deserted street. "Now get out!" Sophia hesitated, fear freezing her in the seat. Caroline, impatient, opened the passenger door and practically pushed the girl out. "Beggars don't belong to our family. Stay away from my brother," she said coldly. With those words, she slammed the door and accelerated, leaving Sophia alone in the darkness. The sound of the car disappearing into the distance seemed to awaken Sophia from her trance. She looked around, panic growing in her chest. Unknown streets stretched in all directions, gloomy and threatening. Not knowing where to go, she began to walk, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. "Robert, please find me. Please don't leave me alone again," she thought desperately. The young Sophia froze for a moment, watching Caroline's taillights disappear into the darkness. The reality of her situation began to weigh down on her like a crushing weight. She was alone again, abandoned in an unknown and dangerous neighborhood. Her first steps were hesitant, almost mechanical. Fear and confusion consumed her, making her heart pound furiously against her chest. The shadowy streets seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions, each corner more menacing than the last. "Mom, why do I always end up alone? Why can't I have a home?" Sophia whispered to herself, hot tears streaming down her cold cheeks. Her fingers unconsciously searched for the brooch in her pocket, but it wasn't there. With a painful jolt, she remembered she had lost it in Robert's mansion. The loss of the brooch, her last tangible connection to her mother, made Sophia sob openly. She stumbled forward, her sobs echoing through the empty streets. The cold wind cut through her thin clothes, cruelly reminding her of the brief moments of comfort she had experienced in Robert's home. As she wandered aimlessly, Sophia began to notice the familiar signs of street life she had tried so hard to forget. Hunched figures sleeping in doorways, the acrid smell of garbage and despair, the vacant stare in the eyes of people hurrying past, avoiding eye contact. I don't want to go back to that. I can't take it anymore, Sophia thought, panic rising in her chest. But where else could she go? Robert would probably believe Caroline. Who would believe a street girl over a rich, sophisticated woman? The rain began to fall, first in sparse drops, then in dense curtains that obscured her vision. Sophia ran frantically, searching for any kind of shelter. Her clothes, once clean and dry, now clung to her body, waterlogged and heavy. Tripping on an uneven sidewalk, Sophia fell to her knees, painfully scraping them on the rough concrete. The impact seemed to break something inside her, and she began to cry uncontrollably. "Why doesn't anyone want me? What's wrong with me?" she screamed at the dark sky, her voice almost lost in the sound of the rain. Forcing herself to stand, Sophia continued her aimless journey. Each step was a struggle against exhaustion, cold, and despair that threatened to consume her. She passed dark storefronts, her ghostly reflections staring back at her. A small, frightened girl, alone in a world too big and cruel. The storm intensified, turning the streets into rivers. Sophia could barely see ahead, occasional flashes of lightning briefly illuminating the path before her. It was during one of those flashes that she glimpsed a narrow alley between two abandoned buildings. Without a second thought, Sophia ran into the alley, seeking any protection from the fury of the elements. Huddling against the cold, damp wall, she drew her knees up to her chest, trying to preserve what little warmth she had left. There, surrounded by darkness and the deafening roar of the rain, Sophia allowed herself to imagine, for a brief moment, what it would have been like if things had been different. If Robert had truly let her stay in his home, if he had wanted her, if she could have a home and a family again. But the cold, damp reality of the alley brought her back to the present. She was alone, abandoned, with no one to turn to. With that desolate thought, Sophia closed her eyes, exhausted and defeated, as the storm continued to rage around her, echoing the turmoil in her broken heart. As Sophia wandered the streets, Robert hurried back to the dining room after a lengthy work call, his face pale with worry. His eyes scanned the empty room, his heart racing with every second. "Sophia? Caroline?" he called, his voice echoing through the silent mansion. A sense of dread overcame him when he noticed Sophia's purse dropped on the floor, its contents spilled. He ran from room to room, shouting their names, until the sound of screeching tires outside caught his attention. "No, no, no! What did she do? Did something happen to Sophia? Please God, let the girl be all right. She's been through too much already," Robert muttered, rushing to the window in time to see Caroline's car disappearing into the rainy night. He had yet to stop and think about the implications of his ex-girlfriend's brooch, what it could mean for him and Sophia. Wasting no time, he approached Caroline's car being parked in front of the mansion. He could barely think through the nervousness coursing through his frantic body. "Where is she, Caroline?" Robert demanded, his voice shaking with suppressed anger. "What did you do with Sophia?" Caroline looked up, a mixture of guilt and defiance in her gaze. "I did what was necessary, Robert. That girl was manipulating you. I took her back to the streets." A discussion that followed was heated, with accusations flying from both sides. Robert couldn't believe in his sister's cruelty, while Caroline insisted she was just protecting the family. Without wasting any more time, Robert took the keys to his car and headed towards the location where his sister had left Sophia. The rain lashed the windshield, hindering visibility, but he refused to slow down. His thoughts were focused on Sophia, imagining the fear she must be feeling. "Hold on, Sophia. I'm coming to get you," he thought, gripping the steering wheel tightly. After nearly an hour of frantic searching through the rainy city streets, Robert finally spotted a small, huddled figure in a dark alley. His heart leapt as he recognized Sophia, trembling and drenched by the relentless rain. He braked sharply, leaping from the car without caring about the storm that whipped him. "Sophia, thank God I found you. I was desperate, afraid of losing you," Robert shouted, running towards the girl. She raised her head, her eyes wide with fear, turning to relief as she recognized him. "Robert, you came for me," Sophia whispered, her voice almost inaudible beneath the roar of the rain. Robert knelt beside her, enveloping her in his arms without hesitation. "Of course I did, Sophia. I would never abandon you, never do that to you. You'll never be alone again," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Then he picked her up, feeling how much she was shivering, and quickly carried her to the car. Once inside, he turned the heater up full blast and wrapped Sophia in his dry coat. "Sophia, listen to me. I don't know if it's a coincidence that you have my Elizabeth's brooch. She was my ex-girlfriend. We met in high school and fell in love. However, when I finished school, my parents paid for me to study abroad and she broke up with me, saying I would have a bright future and she wouldn't get in the way of my dreams. If your mother is Elizabeth, I don't know what that means or how to explain it. But one thing I'm sure of, you'll be like a daughter to me since I found you on the rainy streets and took you to my home. I will protect you, no matter what happens. It doesn't matter if you're my biological daughter, you'll be my daughter of the heart anyway," Robert began, holding the girl's icy hands between his own. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of relief and hope. You really want to be my dad?" she asked, sobbing softly. Robert smiled, feeling his own heart warm. "More than anything in the world, Sophia," he replied. The journey back to the mansion was silent, but comfortable. Sophia fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the night's events, while Robert drove with renewed determination. Upon arriving, Caroline was waiting at the door, her face a mask of remorse and apprehension. Robert carried Sophia to her room, walking straight past his sister without a word. After ensuring that Sophia was dressed in dry clothes and making sure she was warm and safe, sleeping in her room, Robert went downstairs to confront Caroline. Robert looked at his sister, furious. "How could you abandon a child on the streets, Caroline? Sophia is a girl, a scared and lonely child. She didn't deserve to go through that." "Didn't deserve it?" Caroline retorted, her voice rising. "Can't you see what Sophia did? Do you think it's a coincidence that she has something that belonged to Elizabeth? She probably stole it, or worse, is using it to manipulate you emotionally," she yelled. Robert clenched his fists, struggling to remain calm. "You don't know that, none of us do. But what I do know is that I won't abandon a child in need because of your paranoia," he responded, his voice furious. Caroline laughed humorlessly. "Paranoia? Is that what you call my concern for you, for our family? That beggar will ruin everything, Robert. She'll suck you dry and then discard you." "Enough! Sophia stays, Caroline. She's part of our family now, whether you like it or not. If you can't accept that, then maybe you're the one who should leave," Robert shouted, his patience finally running out. Caroline's eyes widened in shock. You're kicking me out? Because of her? A stranger you barely know?" Robert took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. "I'm not kicking you out, Caroline. I'm giving you a choice. Accept Sophia and treat her with respect, or find somewhere else to live. I won't tolerate more of this cruelty." Amidst the argument, the siblings didn't see what was happening around them until it was too late. "Smell of smoke. Caroline, do you smell that?" Robert said suddenly, interrupting the discussion. The sound of shattering glass beside them alerted them to the impending danger. Raging flames began consuming the room, the intense heat forcing them to retreat. Robert ran upstairs to look for Sophia towards the flames. "We have to get out of here now. Get out, Caroline. I'll get Sophia," he said, his tone urgent. Before Caroline could stop him, Robert ran back into the burning house. The fire was spreading rapidly, making visibility almost nil due to thick smoke. Robert covered his face with his shirt sleeve, coughing violently as he climbed the stairs. The heat was intense, making him sweat profusely. "Robert, get out of there right now!" Caroline shouted from outside, panic evident in her voice. Ignoring his sister's screams, Robert continued his desperate search. He knew he was risking his life, but he needed to save Sophia. Finally, he reached her room, the flames licking the walls. With frantic movements, he rummaged through the bed until he found her sleeping, oblivious to the chaos happening around her. With his heart pounding frantically against his chest, faced with the urgency of the situation, He almost cried with joy to find the girl amid the smoke. It was a hope. "Sophia, Sophia, wake up. We have to get out of here. Get on my lap," he shouted, taking the girl in his arms. "Robert, what's happening? Why is everything full of smoke?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear. "The house is catching fire. We have to get out of here." Robert adjusted her in his arms, running back to the hallway, now engulfed in flames. The heat was unbearable, the flames dangerously dancing near them. Robert protected Sophia as much as he could, but the dense smoke made every breath an agony. They stumbled down the stairs, Robert struggling to keep his balance while carrying the girl. Finally, the front door was in sight. Robert could hear Caroline's desperate screams from outside. A few more steps, and they would be safe. But the effort and smoke inhalation had taken their toll. Just meters from the exit, Robert felt his legs weaken. His vision darkened at the edges, and he staggered. "Sophia, run! Get out of here! Run!" he gasped, putting her down. Before Sophia could react, Robert collapsed to the floor unconscious. Dad, wake up! I'm not going to leave you here!" Sophia shouted, kneeling beside him. Outside, through the shattered windows of the mansion, Caroline saw the scene unfold in horror and panicked. "Sophia, get out of there now. Leave him and save yourself. He's not going to make it. Come now," Caroline shouted, the desperation evident in her voice. She knew that's what her brother would want, but Sophia couldn't abandon the man who had done everything for her, who had been by her side. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she grabbed Robert's arms and began dragging him toward the door. "I'm not going to leave you, Dad. I'll never leave you alone. Wasn't that what you told me? I'm not going to abandon you either," she murmured, tears streaming down her soot-stained face. Every inch was a struggle, Robert's weight almost impossible for her frail arms. The flames drew closer, the unbearable heat making Sophia want to give up. But she refused to abandon Robert. With one last superhuman effort, she managed to pull him out of the house, both collapsing onto the fresh grass of the garden. Caroline ran to them, incredulous at what she had just witnessed. Sophia, exhausted and coughing violently, still clung to Robert, refusing to let him go even as the paramedics arrived. The emergency professionals rushed to assist them, while Sophia watched the scene, tears streaming down her soot-stained cheeks. Caroline, still gasping for breath, looked at the girl and then at her brother. Sophia's courage in going back, risking her own life, and Robert's determination to save the memories of his past touched something deep within Caroline. "Sophia, I'm sorry for everything. Please forgive me," she called out, her voice trembling. The girl approached cautiously, her eyes alternating between Caroline and Robert, who was being attended to by the paramedics. Caroline reached out, gently touching Sophia's face. "You didn't give up and run. You stayed and saved him. That's true love. The kind of love a family should have," Caroline continued, the emotion evident in her voice. In the weeks following the fire, Robert and Sophia slowly recovered, both physically and emotionally. The mansion was in ruins, but they had found a new home, a cozy place in the heart of the city. Caroline, deeply touched by the events of that fateful night, had moved into a nearby apartment, giving space for Robert and Sophia to reconnect. On a sunny afternoon, Robert and Sophia were sitting on the apartment's porch, watching the city bustle below. The silence between them was comfortable, but laden with unasked questions. Finally, Robert took a deep breath and turned to Sophia. "Sophia, I think it's time we talked about your mother. Do you feel comfortable discussing her?" he asked carefully. Sophia nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "I miss her so much. She was so kind, so strong. She always said that one day we would find my father," the girl replied with a distant look. Robert smiled softly, encouraging her to continue. "What was she like, Sophia? What was her name?" he asked, trying to keep his curiosity contained. Sophia hesitated for a moment as if gathering courage. "Her name was Elizabeth, just like your ex-girlfriend," she finally said, her voice almost a whisper. The name hit Robert like a bolt of lightning. He visibly paled, his mind reeling with possibilities. "Elizabeth. Sophia, did you say Elizabeth?" he repeated, his voice trembling. The girl nodded, confused by Robert's reaction. "Yes, Elizabeth. Why?" Do you think it could be the same Elizabeth? There could be two with the same name and the same brooch. I'm afraid to hope and promise you won't leave me if they're not the same women? Sophia asked with immense vulnerability. She had already thought that Robert's ex-girlfriend could be the same woman as her mother, but was afraid to raise hopes and have Robert leave her if she wasn't. Robert closed his eyes, long-buried memories resurfacing. Sophia, I told you about the Elizabeth I met a long time ago. I don't know if this is all an incredible coincidence or a miracle, but I know I would never leave her for this. I promised I wouldn't leave you alone, and I'll keep my promise no matter what happens, he said, causing Sophia's eyes to fill with tears. You really think? You think you could be my real father? She asked, her voice choked. At that moment, they both knew they needed concrete answers. In the days that followed, Robert arranged for a DNA test. The wait for the results was agonizing, filled with equal parts hope and fear. When the envelope finally arrived, Robert and Sophia sat together on the couch, both trembling slightly. With shaking fingers, Robert opened the envelope and read the contents. After a few moments, Robert gently pulled away, holding Sophia's hands in his. His eyes were filled with love and determination as he began to speak. Sophia, my dear daughter, there is so much I want to tell you, so much I need you to know. From the moment I saw you on that rainy street, something inside me connected with you. Now I know it was the call of blood, the unbreakable bond between father and daughter. I'm sorry for all the years we lost, for not being there to see your first steps, hear your first words, dry your tears when you fell. My heart aches thinking of all the nights you spent alone, scared, not knowing you had a father who would have moved mountains to protect you. I don't want you to blame your mother for not telling me. She probably thought she was doing what was best for everyone. She always cared about me, and I know she did the same for you. I can't erase my absence from the beginning of your life, but I want you to know that from now on, I'll be here. Always. For every moment, every laugh, every tear. I'll teach you everything I know, learn from you everything I don't. We'll create new memories to make up for the ones we missed. You are the living proof of the love I shared with your mother, Elizabeth. She must have been an amazing mother, Sophia, to have raised such a kind, brave, and strong girl. I see her in you, Sophia. I promise I'll do everything in my power to be the father you deserve. I'll love you unconditionally, support all your dreams, protect you from all dangers. But I'll also give you space to grow, to make mistakes and learn from them, to become the amazing person I know you'll be. It won't always be easy. We'll face challenges ahead, difficult moments, but we'll face them together as a family, because that's what we are now, Sophia, a family. You and me, united not only by blood, but by love, by the choice to be together. I want you to know that I'm incredibly proud of you, of your courage in facing so many adversities, your strength in never giving up, your kindness even when the world wasn't kind to you. You are a miracle, Sophia, my miracle. You saved me, my daughter. I owe you my life. And now, my dear daughter, we have a whole life ahead of us. A life to get to know each other, to laugh together, to create our own traditions. A life for me to see you grow. Become the amazing woman I know you'll be. So, Sophia, my daughter, my heart, my reason to live, I make you this promise. From today on, you'll never be alone again, and you'll always have your father's love. He'll be here by your side, loving you, supporting you, guiding you. We're a family now, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will change that. I love you, my daughter, more than words can express. And I'm grateful, infinitely grateful for this second chance, for you, for us. When Robert finished speaking, there were tears in both their eyes. Sophia threw herself into her father's arms, sobbing with joy and relief. Finally, after so much time, so much suffering, she had found her home, her father, her family. And there, in that embrace, father and daughter silently promised each other that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as it should have always been. 6 months had passed since that emotional afternoon when Robert and Sophia discovered their family bond. Life had changed dramatically for both of them, transforming into a journey of discovery, love and healing. The mansion, once ravaged by fire, had been rebuilt, but not as a cold replica of its former glory. Now it was a warm home, filled with laughter and memories in the making. The walls, once adorned with expensive paintings, now proudly displayed Sophia's colorful drawings and photos of the new family. Robert had reduced his working hours, prioritizing time with his newly discovered daughter. Together they explored the city, had picnics in the park, and spent cozy nights reading stories. Every moment was precious, an attempt to make up for lost time. Sophia blossomed under her father's love and care. Her eyes, once filled with fear and distrust, now shone with joy and curiosity. She had started attending a local school, making friends and discovering talents she never knew she had. Her laughter echoed through the house, a sound that warmed Robert's heart every day. Caroline, surprisingly, had become a constant and positive presence in their lives. The traumatic fire event and Sophia's courage had melted her once cold heart. She was now a loving aunt, always ready to spoil Sophia with gifts and funny stories about Robert when he was young. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, the family was gathered in the garden of the rebuilt mansion. Robert was preparing a barbecue, while Sophia and Caroline set a table for lunch. The air was filled with laughter and the delicious aroma of food. "Dad, do you think Mum would be happy to see us like this?" Sophia called out, her voice full of joy. Robert paused, a soft smile forming on his lips. "I'm sure she would, dear. She must be looking out for us right now with that beautiful smile you inherited. I believe the miracle of our reunion has to do with her. I think she watches over us wherever she is." Sophia ran to hug her father, burying her face in his chest. "I miss her, but I'm so happy to have you and Aunt Caroline now," she murmured. Caroline joined the embrace, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "And we're happy to have you, Sophia. You've brought so much light into our lives." At that moment, surrounded by the love of his family, Robert felt a peace he had never experienced before. He looked up at the blue sky, thinking of Elizabeth and the miracle she had left behind. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind, hoping that somehow, somewhere, Elizabeth could hear him. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of happiness. Laughter, shared stories, and the warmth of family love filled the air. That night, as Robert tucked Sophia into bed, he couldn't help but smile at the sight of Elizabeth's brooch carefully placed on the bedside table, one of the few possessions that had survived the fire, as if proving that nothing could erase the memory they had of Elizabeth. Robert looked at his daughter with a smile after telling her a bedtime story. "Good night, my love," he said, kissing Sophia's forehead. "Good night, Dad. I love you," she replied sleepily. Robert smiled, a huge smile that reached his eyes. "I love you too, more than you can imagine." As he closed Sophia's bedroom door, Robert knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a family, as it should have always been. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to continue bringing you touching stories almost every day. Do not miss the next surprising narrative that is about to appear on your screen. We are immensely grateful to have you here with us. Now, you can click on the links appearing on the screen right now. We have a special selection just for you, filled with valuable stories and guaranteed entertainment. See you there.